You, Okay, we're calling the Port Hueneme City Council regular meeting of December 18th, 2017 at 6:30 p.m. to order. Could we have the, oh no, we actually do a flag salute and then we'll follow with an inspiration by Council Member Jim Hensley.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Everybody sit down. It's great to see a crowd like this. I like to see a community that gets activated and becomes part of the community. An example of this was our seniors luncheon this last week. And we saved from $18 a plate down to $14 a plate. In my opinion, it was amazing to see more better mixed food. And something I was really pleased at, and a lot of other people, is that we, many of our business people and elected officials, was able to serve the people, and the response was absolutely positive. Everybody loved it. Now, in the past, I couldn't foresee all these people in wheelchairs, walkers, canes, or just semi-ambulatory having to get up and fight through the crowds and serve themselves. This time, everything went smooth, the people were pleased, and on top of it, the city didn't pay for hardly anything. It was all contributed by the community itself, for the graciousness of several people here, Mr. Steve Montgomery, Mr. Rollins, Tom Dunn, our community recreational facility people. It was an absolutely fantastic thing, and I think it's going to be bigger and better. We might even think possibly next year even a larger thing. Thank you, that's my invitation.
All right, thank you very much. May we have the roll call, please?
Councilmember Fig.
Here.
Councilmember Hensley.
Here.
Councilmember Shirkey.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Berg.
Here.
Mayor Schnapp.
Here, we have the agenda in front of us.
Move to approve.
I would like to pull
Yes.
item 8F for a quick discussion, if I could, on the consent agenda.
8F, okay. So,
Move to approve is amended.
all right, is there a second on that?
I'll second.
Okay. Oh, so let's go ahead and have a roll call then.
Councilmember Fig.
Yes.
Councilmember Hensley.
Yes.
Councilmember Shirkey.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Berg.
Yes.
Mayor Schnapp.
Yes, okay. So then we will move on to reportable actions from closed session. Mr. City Attorney.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Council. There are no reportable actions from tonight's closed session.
All right, thank you. And with that, we step into item number 6, which is open forum. And we'll take 30 minutes on the agenda right now to have speakers come up. If you want to speak, you can fill out a speaker card. They're on the back table, and then hopefully we'll take them in order. It looks like I have mostly everyone here at this point speaking just on open forum. So we will start with David Murphy, and then David, you'll be followed by Marietta King.
Does this work? Okay, good.
Yeah.
My name is Dave Murphy. I'm the president of the Anacapa View Beach Homeowners Association. And I'm here to share some thoughts on this proposed tower project that our community is adamantly opposed to. We're concerned for a number of reasons. Mayor, did you get the letter that I dropped off at your office last week with a copy for all council members?
I believe I did.
Okay. Did everybody receive that?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. As you'll see in our letter that we sent, we outlined a number of things: noise pollution, traffic, potential crime, lower property values, a number of concerns. One concern that I didn't spell out clearly, or we didn't spell out clearly in that letter, was several years ago when the beach street was eroding away and there were large rocks that had to be placed out there. A number of our homes saw their windows become tilted and had structural damage to their house. So, you know, among the many concerns that we've got with this project is just the stability of the land and how it's going to affect not only our houses but the beachfront. And the last thing that I would mention is, as I recall, we are the friendly city by the sea. Is that right? Is that what Port Hueneme is? Well, we'd certainly like to see that character of the city continue, and we feel that this structure that's going to go in, this proposed structure, is going to really damage that character to our community. And we feel like there's many, many better options for the city to pursue revenue options, and we're happy in our community to share ideas with you as well. Thank you.
Okay, all right, thank you. Marietta King, followed by Tom King.
Marietta King, 285 Whitecap Court, Port Hueneme, and also homeowner at 343 East Surfside Drive. So our family owns 2 properties on the Surfside Drive. Members of the council, staff, also all of our community members here. I'm speaking on behalf of the proposed hotel structure that was spoken about at our community meeting about 2 weeks ago at the corner of Surfside Drive and Market Street. Our community is city of Port Hueneme because of the beachfront property that our homeowners have bought, and many, many people have lived here for many years. And to have that type of development go up on that corner just doesn't fit in with our beautiful city, and especially that little tiny street, Market Street. How would that ever accommodate all the activities that go on with the hotel? And just think about the sewers, the repaving the streets, all those type of expenses that would be the follow-up to having such a building on that corner. And I understand that our city owns a very nice piece of property right at the entrance of the port across from our museum. Perhaps that could be an area where a hotel could be built, especially if it's going to be so high. People would still have an opportunity for the views of our city, yet it would be inland, and it would be also in an area that would be more conducive to the port and also to other areas within our downtown, because for a revenue building project, you would think you would want it to be in an area where the revenues would go back into our city. And also for one of the topics that was brought up was that people who would come to the port of Hueneme wanted a nice glossy type of place to stay. Well, what about our own Holiday Inn? We already have a place there, but if they wanted something that was more fancy, then they could build it that is closer to not only the actual port, but also to the port offices on Panoma Street. So perhaps another location to keep our city, the friendly city by the sea, and protect our clean and beautiful beaches, and also for all the families that do live along Surfside Drive. So please consider, it's not essentially that I have an opposition to the project, it's an opposition to the location for the people that live in Port Hueneme. Thank you, council members and staff, and also to our community members.
Okay, thank you. We have Tom King, followed by Alan Phillips.
Hi, Mayor, City Council members, Attorney Green. I'm here in total opposition of the location of this proposed tower. I'm going to stay on script if that's all right with you, because I have a little bit to say. From what I can tell from a October 16 agenda item prepared by our city attorney, there's a 12-story building proposed, or at least thought of, at the corner of Surfside and Market. There's also a plan to build a parking lot at the area between Surfside 1 driveway and Surfside and Market. I don't know how many parking spaces you're going to get in there with entrance and an exit, but it certainly would be a blight, in my opinion, and I think the opinion of a number of people that are here, and about 80%, 90% of the people that were at this recent community public meeting that was held on December 5. Tony Stewart was there, Director of Community Development, Steve Kinney, Economic Development Consultant, and Charles Green, our City Attorney. The stated goal that was repeated several times regarding the project was to increase the revenue to the city. And there's one person that I know of that is opposed to the location of this project, that isn't in support, that they are in support of trying to generate more revenue for this city. I just want to make that clear. We're also very supportive, not only of the city, certainly the port, certainly the base, and the general community. There were an estimated 90 to 100 people there. I don't know if you got that feedback. And largely people from Anacapa View Beach Homes, Surfside 1, Surfside 3, and Surfside 4. There were others there. From what I can tell from Mr. Green's report, there does appear to be a developer that is in the #1 position. That was disturbing to many of us. There's actually, Attorney Green did, in my opinion, a favor to us, because he made a comment at the very end of the meeting, I'll be done in a second, saying that the benefit of 23,000 people here in Port Hueneme should, in effect, and I'm paraphrasing, forgive me, outweigh the 84. Well, we're part of the 23,000. We can mobilize people. Nobody here was, was voted on by 23,000 people. We feel very strong about this location issue and what the damage it would do to the sightline in regards to the beach. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We have Alan Phillips, followed by Gregory Allen Ferguson.
Hi, I'm Alan Phillips. I'm an 8-year resident, taxpayer, and voter in the city of Port Hueneme. I prepared a letter for the city council. I tried to send it via the website today. I tried from an Apple computer and a PC, and both of them I got error messages when trying to send it to the entire city council as well as individuals. So I've got a copy of it here. Who should I give it to?
The city clerk, please.
So I would appreciate it if that was read. I have a couple of questions in there. I would like some feedback. I've put my contact information in there, but I do want to go on the record as being adamantly opposed to this project. Thank you.
Thank you. Gregory Allen Ferguson, Senior. Okay, Stephen Gama, and then following Stephen, oh, well, you have two.
I wanted to do the holiday luncheon first, if that's okay. So we're told that and the clock hasn't turned yet. We're told that the senior holiday luncheon is a 20-year plus activity, and we tried to verify that and we couldn't. And so we're kind of stuck in between 20 and 28 years. Maybe this was the 29th year, we don't know, but it'd be nice if we could find out, because it's a long tradition. And anytime you change something and you try something new, very, very apprehensive at the start of the event. And I was like, we have a new caterer, we're trying a new service thing, and we're waiting for volunteers. And one of the things that I could do better on, hopefully next year, is be more prepared with the volunteers. So we have the food, we have everybody there, and we're like, who's coming to help? And then comes Jess Herrera right through the door. Then after him came Tracy Sisson, then Chief Salinas, then Commander Albertson, then Mayor Schnapp, then Mayor Pro Tem Will Berg, and then Tom Figg, and John Sharkey and his wife, and Jim Hensley, Rod Butler, and I had a couple longshoremen show up. Tony Sullivan showed up, and next thing I know, we had more volunteers than we needed. And we poured on the senior holiday service, and we had, what do you call it, evaluation forms, and I think we got nearly 50% of those forms filled out. And overwhelmingly, they loved the service, they loved the food, they loved the activities. We went a little long with the entertainment, but that's okay. Rich Rollins, myself, Anna Hanley, and Sharon, we all feel that we could do better next year, and we're really appreciative to all the volunteers that came out. And the most gratifying thing is to see that change is possible and that all of you were a part of it, and we really, really appreciate your effort in coming out and helping us, and we hope to do better next year. And we got a lot of positive feedback on everything we did. And again, I just want to go out of my way to thank Mayor Schnapp, Mayor Pro Tem Will Berg, and the rest of you for coming and supporting us. And Rich, would you like to say anything?
He said it all.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank
Steve,
you.
thank you so much for coordinating. It's you did a yeoman's job.
Oh, and
So
I want
thank you.
one person, very important person I forgot to mention is Tama Hanley. She was great to work with. Really appreciate her. Very good selection for that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Did you want to say anything about the business license fees?
Sure, I would.
He gets a,
I
go
for-
ahead,
okay.
clock reset.
So I was working for a company called CJ Cito and Associates a year ago. I stopped working for them. I was working on a project with the VA facilities. They're a company that's been in Hueneme on the base for 11 or 12 years. When I was working there, they got a notice that they were overlooked and they're delinquent on their business license fees for working on the base. And my boss read through the thing, and he determined that he owed 3 years of fees, and he had been out there for 11 years, and that was the first time he ever got this request to pay the fees. So he gladly cut the check, I think $3,000, maybe less, I'm not sure. But at that time, I kind of wrote up the experience, and we determined that, yes, the city needs more revenue, and yes, that's one of those things that I think we could do better at. And I know there's been a lot of turnover and staff and this and that, but I don't recall ever hearing anything of the new ideas, new approach to trying to identify all those businesses out there. Again, CJ Cito's support services has been out there for now 12 or 13 years. I think they have 2 or 3 contracts on the base. So it just reminded me to make a request that perhaps we could get this back on the evaluation stage and see if we could do better. Thank you for your time, and Merry Christmas.
Right. Thank you. Okay, is there anyone else who'd like to address the council during this time for open forum? We do have a time that we can allocate for that as well at the end of the meeting. Okay, so seeing none, we move on to item number 7, presentation. And for this, I'll call up Mr. Villafana.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, City Council. Tonight we're here to recognize a very valuable employee to the city. And it's been my pleasure to work with him for the past 8 months, Mr. Ayala. Mr. Ayala has been an integral part of the team that has made the improvements to the beach, that has painted the crosswalks, that has put up the reflective signs. He has done a great job along with the rest of the street crew. And I appreciate that, and he will be missed.
All right, and for that, Mr. Ayala, will you join me at the podium? I do have a special plaque for you. So let me read what it says here. Alberto Mendoza Ayala, 2000 to 2017. Thank you for 17 years of dedicated service to the city of Port Hueneme. Best wishes for a happy, healthy, and fulfilling retirement. Would you like to say a few words?
Thank you for everything.
No? Do you want to address us at all?
Thank you.
No?
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you want to take a picture? With the, you want to be in the middle?
Yeah, please.
Or you can, right here in the middle?
It's good. Thank you.
Is there anyone here on the dais who would like to say something about Mr. Ayala or thank him? Yes.
I am so pleased with the Public Works Department. I'm so gratified to see the employees pull together, feel motivated, getting down there, cleaning up the beaches, the restrooms, working in Miranda Park. And when I see these gentlemen here, I know they're people who really like their job. And it's a nice thing you can do when you come to work and you like your job, right? It's much appreciated. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Okay, so with that, yes, did you want to say something?
Sure.
Councilmember Sharkey.
Sure, thank you. Yeah, thank you for being here. Thank you for all you've done for the city. When people come to Port Hueneme, what they notice is the work that you do. That's what they see, and we appreciate it. We really do. Thank you.
Yeah. Very much so. It's like the billboard for the city is what our Public Works Department does. So thank you so much for your service. All right. So with that, we move on to consent agenda without item F, and we'll deal with that after we take on the.
Move to approve the remainder of the consent calendar.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? No opposition, so the motion passes. And with this, I really want to make sure that we acknowledge then the SEIU for really coming to the table and becoming a team player, and not only becoming, you always have been. And so we really do appreciate the efforts in pulling together then this agreement that will carry us through the end of the calendar year. So thank you to SEIU and the members. All right, so then we have item 8F that we're taking on individually. Mr.
Yes, I'd like to ask some
Councilmember
questions
Hensley?
and maybe get filled in some information. 2 or 3 months ago, effective date of November 1, we entered into a monthly grant activities from a corporation that would apply grants for grants for our city. And I haven't heard much back from them. That's, it's only $3,000 a month, but it would be nice. And I looked over here and see the report, and at pages 95, 96 of 205, and it doesn't really tell me much about what has happened. I don't see any of these people here making reports. We've submitted 3 grant requests, whatever the case might be, whatever. I don't want to get caught into a contractor again where we don't even know the contractor's existing, except maybe showing up once in a great while and giving a little bit of lip service. I'm not saying anything wrong against these people, but I'd like to have a monthly report if we could. That's my, and is there anything further that we know about it?
I can tell you that during the first couple of months when California Consulting begins work with a new client, most of the effort is getting California Consulting acquainted with the city, with the staff of the city, and with the grant priorities for the city. So that's a lot of what has been going on really since November 1st, was when the agreement became effective. I think I mentioned when we had the council approve the agreement that they have been working with us for several months now before the contract went into place on a one-time contract or a grant-specific agreement for some work on the Little League fields, and the idea being that the Little League and the city, Little League organization and the city would apply jointly for this grant, which is actually provided through Major League Baseball throughout the country. They do community grants for improvement of Little League facilities. So that one is one that's actually in progress now. It'll be a few more months before we know whether we got it or not. But as far as the future, I will ask if they are willing to be present on a monthly basis for a report. Normally in the past, what I've done is maybe quarterly in-person agreements or in-person reports, with the non-in-person months being what we did tonight, which is a written report on the consent calendar. I'll ask them if they're willing and available to do the monthly report, and I'll report back to the council on that.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, $3,000 a month, I guess, isn't a lot to them, but it is nice if they could just come in at the beginning once a month and give us a report of their activities. It'd be kind of heartwarming to me. Thanks.
Okay, all right. Thank you. So with that, we move on to item 9A. Oh, yes, I'm sorry, Councilmember
I believe we do need to vote on that.
Oh,
I will move to
that's
receive
right,
and
thank you.
file.
All right.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No opposition, so motion carries. All right, thank you. So we move on to item number 9A, and we'll start with Public Works.
Good evening again, City Council. Madam Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, tonight we're covering the Fox Canyon Groundwater Management Agency Sustainability. And Mr. Hickox has been spearheading this. He's got the historical knowledge. He's been with the city and dealing with our water issues for a number of years. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Steve.
Thank you, Mr. Filifana, Madam Mayor, members of City Council. This report is a receive and file. It's just an update at this time. The fires that recently ravaged through the city of Ventura has canceled a number of meetings that related to this topic. So some of the information that I was anticipating having at this meeting did not develop. So I'll have more information as we move forward. This update is just to give you a heads up that the Fox Canyon Groundwater Management Agency has been designated as the groundwater sustainability agency for our groundwater basin. They are to report to the state on a regular basis on the sustainable activities of our groundwater basin. The GSA is responsible for developing a plan that will bring our groundwater basin into a sustainable yield by a certain time frame. Part of that process will be to develop a plan that their consultant is currently working on to bring the basin into sustainable yield for all groundwater pumpers. Right now, the Fox Canyon Groundwater Management Agency has requested that their consultant submit to them the draft GSP, knowing that some of the information within that plan has data gaps and some of that information is not quite known. So the consultant has submitted a draft plan to the board for their review. It is currently 430 pages in length. There is a number of the meat and potato aspects of that report are still missing or not included into the report. The process will call for a 120-day review period of this document by stakeholders. And the GMA is asking for this document to be submitted now, and that they would determine if the 120-day open comment period would begin. The technical advisory group for the Fox Canyon Groundwater Management Agency has requested and stated that they are not in support of submitting this document and putting it out into public early, or at least not initiating the 120-day comment period until such time that more data is available. The GMA has stated publicly that they are responsible for getting this basin into a sustainable yield. They understand that the document will be a work in progress document, which means as time goes on and as the rain seasons come and go or the dry periods come and go, that they will monitor the sustainable yield of the basin and make adjustments to the plan as needed in order to kind of go with the flow, no pun intended. And with this report, it comes with a lot of uncertainties. And like, as I mentioned, the information that's contained within the document right now has data gaps. They really do need to have the safe yield valuation. They need a water hydrology report. They need data that's come from United to determine the allocation program for each groundwater pumper. All of that information really needs to be put into the document before we can really see what the impacts are to each agency allocation. So at this time, I'm only here tonight to report to you that the document has been submitted as requested. It is on the Fox Canyon Groundwater Management Agency's website. I provided a copy of that link to you in this report. And also in this report, I listed the table of contents of that document so that if you wish to look at the contents of that document before going to the website, you could identify what areas you may be interested in targeting and looking at, and then kind of weed through the 430 pages. We will be doing a group review. We currently have a consultant on staff that's overseeing the negotiations for the municipal and industrial group, the 5 cities. That consultant will be tasked with reviewing the document in whole and providing technical assistance to the 5 cities that he represents. And also this individual is one of the hydrogeologists that is on a member of the TAG community that's providing technical information to the GMA. So we will get a definite, good solid review of this document once it's been reviewed in its entirety. We will report back to this council when additional information is made available, but just know that this is the first time that the document has been released and put on a public website. The open comment period has not begun. We are waiting to hear from the GMA board when they wish to initiate that process. So it is that time frame that we're waiting for on our next milestone, is to find out when they're gonna require that open 120-day comment period. And then we will make comments accordingly. And with that, if there's any further direction or questions from council, I'll be more than happy to answer.
Okay, are there questions from the dais? Yes, Councilmember Hensley.
Thanks a lot for the report, Mr. Hickok, Mr. Villafana. Having worked or been involved with the Association of Water Agency for over a period of several years now, having been a kid in this area for many, many years, and seeing how many people are growing, the buildings, the industrials, the people, the farming, the agriculture, and it's almost a foregone conclusion we're going to keep being overwhelmed with an increasing population unless we put up a 1,000-foot wall and say no new people, but that's not going to happen. Studying this, I don't see how we can have a long-term sustainable groundwater. It's a nice thing to walk on to that concept, but I look back into some of the history where droughts have come and a lot of rancheros and ranchers have lost their properties because all of a sudden there was a long-term drought. Maybe some of us, nobody knows the answer really, but I think Fox Canyon needs to look further into other resources, other means of getting water. And I think United Water is probably working on that type of situation too. But it's a good concept, but what is your opinion? I don't feel that we can have a sustainable, maybe, but maybe not, depending on what the good Lord sends down to us.
Well, you're absolutely right. The plan will need to incorporate multiple areas. It'll need to be ensure that water is being used wisely. It will require new water source projects. It'll require direct potable reuse or indirect potable reuse of wastewater. It will require new agreements to be put in place for diversions or off the surface water from the Santa Clara River. A little bit of lightening up on the regulations for the endangered species or something like that to make that all happen. So it's going to require a number of different components to be included, one of which too is also how we use the water within our own system and within our own basin. It's going to require a regional approach. It's not one agency is going to be able to solve this problem. It will require more surface water flows, more rain, but it'll also require better use of the water that we do have.
Thank you.
Okay. Yes, Councilmember Sharkey.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. And since it's been mentioned, you know, I firmly believe the best opportunity we have for new water is this city working jointly with the city of Oxnard on water reclamation. We know the condition of the wastewater plant over there. We just have to get this together. And if we can't do that, then shame on us. But if we look at just the next item on this agenda points out some of the difficulties of dealing with the city of Oxnard. I don't know how we move this process forward. You know, I feel like time is wasting, and I appreciate the political difficulties they have over there, and I appreciate the staff difficulties they have. But you know, we have to find some way to move this forward. We can provide the water needs for 250,000 people for the next 30 or 40 years if we do this. And if we don't do this, just looking at what's coming down from GMA, I can tell you the face of this county is going to change radically. So we really have to get on the stick here and start moving.
Okay. Any other questions? No? All right. So for this, it's recommended that we receive and file.
Move to receive and file.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, so motion carries. We move on to item number 9B, and is this Mr. Viafana? It's Fred Camarillo.
Yes, as Councilman Sharkey pointed out, this points out some of the issues that Oxnard has. This project was initiated in 2006 and completed in 2011. And finally, we're just straightening out some of that bureaucracy here, and Mr. Camarillo has the details.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. As you can see in the report, what we're asking for tonight is authorization to appropriate the $193,181 for our pro rata share of the Redwood Trunk Sewer Facility. And then authorize us to go ahead and make that payment. Staff has been meeting with City of Oxnard staff over a number of different issues related to payments that are related to joint projects. This is one of them that myself and some of the Oxnard staff have been going over for the last couple of years. Initially, as it's mentioned in the report, the project's been done for a while. Part of that was, when the project was completed, was to go ahead and review all of the documents as it related to the project to verify that all the charges in there were appropriate. Several of their staff members, for various reasons, left employment with the City of Oxnard, which left it as an open bill. They had interim position people in place, but none of which had really worked on the project and weren't comfortable with making a decision on reviewing the documents necessary to make this payment. Ultimately, we've met, gone back through a couple of different reviews, verified that the costs that they were asking for were valid, and so as part of that, we're asking to go ahead and get authorization to appropriate the funding and then allow us to go ahead and make that payment. The line has been in service for years. The city's been receiving that benefit, so we're just asking to tie this project off.
Okay, So are there any questions from the dais? Yes, Mayor Pro Tem Berg.
Fred, how many years is this covering?
Well, the payment itself is for the project, which was the entire Redwood Trunk facility.
That would have been due some time ago then.
Yeah, the Victoria Trunk part of it was the last remaining piece, which was one of 4 different smaller payments that were part of our cost-sharing agreement with them. Our wastewater master plan called for us to eliminate as many lift stations as we could, which prevent our wastewater system used to pump water all the way down east on Channel Islands, south on Ventura Road, and I'm sure many of you can remember we had break after break after break for years because it was a faulty pipe that was in the ground. Part of our master plan was to eliminate all that, give shorter connections and do a newer system, which we had participated in with Oxnard to go ahead and join their Redwood Trunk facility, which is going to be new, larger, help us immensely by eliminating and bypassing that faulty pipe. So they ran into several delays with the design and ultimately the construction of that last piece. So there was about 4.5 to 5 years between when 90% of the system was done. The last part wasn't. Once this Victoria piece was finished, then that's when we were supposed to go ahead and go over all of the accounting of the project, and it just so happened the timing was bad and the staff wasn't there, and it took a long time to go ahead and get through. And there were major questions about some of the initial billings that we got. We reconciled all of that though, and
This
we're
is not the
comfortable with
first.
them.
This is not the first rendition. Then you've gone through this several times.
Yes, this is, we went through 3 variations of cost accounting. And
Now, will there be recurring costs every
no,
year?
this is the last portion of the payment for our cost share of that entire facility.
Okay, any other questions? Yes, Councilmember Hensley.
Just a couple of questions, if I could, Mr. Camarillo. I enjoy the name Redwood, having spent some time up in the Redwoods in Northern California. But is this just a title for it, or is the actual sewer pipe made of redwood? I mean, they do make pipes out of redwood, or did in the past.
No, it's just the title.
It's just a title, okay. And Oxnard's ready to put forth the whole agreement and get it rolling on it, is that correct?
No, the agreement was entered into several years back. This is just the final payment of the project in its entirety, and we needed the final segment to be constructed, and then after that we needed to go through the accounting to make sure that all of the charges that were being charged to the city of Port Hueneme were appropriate. And it took a few renditions to go through that, but we're at a place now where we feel that what they're asking for at this time are all appropriate charges to close this out.
So in other words, Oxnard are ready to rock and roll if we are. You know, we give them the funds.
No, it's complete. The construction's been complete.
Oh, it has been completed. I thought you said there was still a phase.
No. The last phase was the Victoria piece, but that had to be done before we could get to a place where we knew what we were going to owe as a final portion of our cost share.
Okay.
The project was completed in 2011. It just took, because of the staff turnover at Oxnard, it just took this long to straighten things out. Finally, we were able to get a clear accounting and we reviewed it. So this is just an overdue payment that the city of Port Hueneme owes for past construction and participation.
So it behooves us to pay them and get this over and done with and out of the way, correct?
Yes.
Correct.
I so move, unless there's other questions.
Are there any other questions? Councilmember Sharkey?
I'll second.
Okay, all right. So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, so thank you, Mr. Camarillo. Thank you for being persistent here for us. And with that, we move on to item number 10, Police Chief. A crime statistic report.
Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, City Council, City staff. City Clerk Michelle is going to get our presentation up. Is going to get up our presentation up on the screen here, and we can get started. Sorry. My presentation this evening is on our 2017 November crime statistics, along with a community update. So for the month of November, we had a total of 43 Part 1 crimes, which is the same as we had the previous month. Of note, we had a total of 5 violent crimes, but that still keeps us well under the average and well below what the other cities in the county are at. Our property crime rate is the crime that's really hindering us or continuing to be a problem, specifically our larceny and thefts. Shoplifts continue to be a problem, along with unlocked vehicles. And so to curb that, just this past weekend we did a shoplift operation at our local Rite Aid, and within 3 hours we caught 3 shoplifters. So if that gives you any type of idea, representation of how bad the shoplift problem is in our city. The 3 stores that continue to be a problem are Rite Aid, CVS, and the Ralph's Supermarket. But they are working with us, and they have been good partners. To give you an idea of the shoplift problem, if you took the 5 shoplifts we average every month and multiplied that by 12, that's 60 shoplifts. You divide that by the number of total crimes we have. Shoplifts account for 15% of our crime in our city. So if we eliminated shoplifts, we'd obviously have a 15% decrease. When you compare it to last year, as you can see, the most notable category is we had 34 violent crimes up to this point, and last year we had 64. And so that's 30 fewer violent crimes in our city. As you can see by robberies, we had 29 last year and only 14 this year. 27 stabbings/shootings last year and only 13 this year. So our violent crime has gone down significantly, and our property crimes are kind of regressing to the means as we get later in the year, and our property crime rate has only dropped 9%, as it was as high as 20% earlier in the year. But as you can see by our violent crime rate, it's reduced by 47% so far this year. And I take that back. Our property crime rate has reduced by 3%, and our total crime is 9%. Our domestic violence crime statistics, domestic violence was down for the month of November. I'd like to point to our awareness campaign during the month of October. Hopefully that made an impact. We made no arrests for domestic violence during the month of November, and 20 of our 22 incidents were verbal only. So when we all left here on December 4th, and our power went out at the end of our meeting, little did we know that what we see up here on our slide was the result of that. The Thomas Fire started at approximately 6:30 in the evening, and when we left here by 10:30, that's what you could see on Victoria Avenue as you headed down into the city of Ventura. That is a picture I took after I left the meeting, and you could see how quickly the winds moved the fire from Santa Paula to the city of Ventura. It looks like the entire city of Ventura is on fire there. So I'm going to give you an update as to the Thomas Fire, as well as what the city of Port Hueneme has been doing. So as we know, the fire began 2 weeks ago today at 6:30 in the evening. It's impacted nearly every city in the county of Ventura. It is currently ranked as the 3rd largest fire in California history, but will probably become the largest fire in California history by the time it's all said and done. This is now a federal disaster area, so the cities involved or affected by this event will now use FEMA funds to help recover some of the funds, and the governor has declared this a state of emergency. Over 1,000 structures have been destroyed, along with 242 damage, and we still have 18,000 homes that are still threatened up in the Santa Barbara County area, as well as our county. Nearly 9,000 firefighters have been deployed and support personnel, 972 engines, and it just goes on. We had over 10 states that were out here to assist with this fire. Right now, up to last night, there are still 254 county residents displaced and using the Red Cross shelter at the Ventura County Fairgrounds, as well as 172 at the Red Cross at University of California, Santa Barbara. The Oxnard College shelter was deactivated this past Friday. So what have we done here in the city of Port Hueneme as a community? When we experienced the power outage 2 weeks ago, all the power went out in Oxnard as well as here in Hueneme and Ventura. Unfortunately, the city of Oxnard uses the local gas stations to get gas, and those gas stations do not have generators. So, and because the power outage was out for so long, they came to us because our city yard does have generators, and we were allowed to get them some gas. So we were able to supply them with over 100 gallons of fuel until the power came back up. We do have officers that are assisting with neighborhood security in the city of Ventura. Our Boys and Girls Club locally expanded their hours to accommodate the school closures. And all this week, they are actually going into day camp mode to assist with all the school closures, specifically at the Martin V. Smith Center. Not specifically our club, but obviously our members are allowed to use that facility. The expanded hours here in Hueneme are from 12 to 6 now. As many of you seen based on our Facebook posting, as we are giving out respirator masks to all of our residents for free. They can come to the Port Hueneme Police Department 24 hours a day, and we will more than happy to issue them a mask. And as I'll report earlier or later on during this presentation, our Cops for Tots giveaway, any leftover toys that we have from that giveaway will be donated to victims of the Thomas Fire. So now I'm going to go into some of the events that the police department participated in. That is really snow here at the Port Hueneme Civic Center. A lot of you had the opportunity to see that. That was thanks to the gracious donation of Hueneme Patient Co-op and Beth Thuna, who sponsored this snow here. And thanks to our Public Works Department and our explorers, they were able to put this together. That's 20,000 tons of snow that we had imported. And that was the result here. I did find some video of the, at the time, Mayor and Tracy actually racing down the slopes here. We were able to find that. And let's see if this actually works.
You mean the former mayor?
Yes.
1, 2, 3. You see it! See it! I told you I would!
It was a little choppy, but you all get the point.
1, 2, 3. You see it! See it! I told you I would!
She put wax. All right, let's see if this.
I know.
There we go. Okay, and here's a picture of a holiday tree lighting ceremony, and I do have another video to go with this for those who were not present for the actual tree lighting. And let's see if this works here.
Councilmember Sharpie, come on in. Okay, and everybody get their hand up on the button. All right. Okay, we can do this. We can make this happen. On the count of 3, are we ready? You're gonna help me count? 1, 2, 3.
And there it is. For those who may have missed
actually works. All right. Again, thank you to everybody.
Perfect. So on December 8th, we had our Shop with a Cop event at Walmart. And so here are some of the pictures of the event. We had Santa Claus, as well as several of our officers, go over to Walmart and spend a lot of money for our Cops for Tots event, which is this Thursday here at the Orving Carpenter Community Center. And thanks to the gracious donations, we were able to put this event together. Here's a shot of all the shopping carts, over 20 shopping carts full of toys that we were able to gather that evening or that morning. And that's all of us out here in front. And then there's the man who paid the bill. Our own very city attorney, Charles Green.
Not all of the bill.
Who helped us pay for some of the bill. And I'd like to take this opportunity to thank some of those sponsors who donated money in excess of $250, which included the Hueneme Officers Association, Lujan Transportation, Walmart donated over $2,000, the Longshoremen's Union, Santa to the Sea, the law offices of Charles Green, Tom Fig Consulting, as well as Hueneme Patient Co-op. Here are some of the events that we attended, which included the Friends of the Bard Mansion event this past Friday evening, which was to celebrate 80 years, as well as we got the opportunity to wish Joanne Bard happy birthday. It was our 100th birthday, and Joanne Bard is the daughter of Richard Bard, the man who was generally responsible for bringing our port here. There you have pictures also of the senior housing luncheon, dinner, and serving our seniors. And we also attended the children's Christmas party for the Housing Authority as well. So I wanted just to show some pictures of our holiday senior luncheon, which was staffed by some of our police department personnel, city staff that were also present. There's a picture of our city manager serving some of our seniors. That kind of gives you an idea, for those who were not there, just how many senior citizens that we had at this event, nearly 200. And I'll just jet right through the pictures here. We had music. We had the mariachi group from Hueneme High School, which was a great touch. They were singing Christmas songs as well as mariachi music. And there we go. And I should have been serving food. So I also wanted to talk to you about some of the legal dispensaries that are now starting to come up here in the city of Port Hueneme. We took down our first illegal dispensary this past week. I wanted to bring it to your attention. This particular dispensary is located at 213 West Channel Islands Boulevard and was working under the guise of being a smoke accessory and apparel shop. They have this location as well as a storage location adjacent to this one at 227 West Channel Islands Boulevard. We spent over 100 man-hours with this investigation, as well as subsequent search warrants and the filing of the case. Here's a rear location of their storage location, which is adjacent to the building. They do have a seller's permit and a business license to operate in the city of Port Hueneme. There's a view of the inside of their shop. And this is not clicking over very well. As you can see right on the counter there they have their smoke accessories, but on the counter you'll see a box of edibles that they are illegally selling or dispensing here. There you can see in a small Ziploc bag just behind the counter a Ziploc bag of cannabis. Here you can see they have containers already pre-packaged and filled with cannabis, and they're concealed inside of a coffee jar, and they actually have the medical cannabis sticker on them that I believe the state issues. And there's an example or picture of one. They were also selling what we would call joints, already pre-packaged in capsules, and you can see the prescription dispensary tag on each one of them. And if you were to open it up, there you have your rolled joint ready to go. And here's some of the bags of marijuana we recovered from the dispensary.
Chief?
Yes.
The ones with the medical tags on it, are those counterfeit tags, or
They
is
are
that diverted from a prescription somewhere?
They're counterfeit or stolen. Absolutely. I presume that they're stolen because they are very good in terms of the way they're issued. Here we have what we would call shatter or BHO cannabis oil. This is also highly concentrated cannabis that was recovered. Here's a cabinet full of marijuana. We recovered over 8 pounds of marijuana from this dispensary. And, oops. Can you go back one? And there's just this is what they were selling there out of the location. So with that, these are the upcoming events that we have coming up this week, which is our Cops for Tots event at the Orvie Carpenter Community Center that I hope that all of you can make it, as well as our volunteer luncheon on Friday at the Ocean View Pavilion. There will not be a report during the month of January, as the January report will be a summary of the entire year, which takes a while to compile all those statistics, especially as we compare them to other cities in our county, and we await for their statistics to come in as well. So the overall annual report will be presented during the month of February. And as you can see up there, we have just about hit 25 Facebook followers on our Facebook page, and our goal was to hit 2,500 in the first year, and we're almost there. We're at about 2,350 now, so we've almost hit our goal of Facebook followers, which has become very useful. This past week, we had a Down syndrome 10-year-old who had somehow made it away from home and over into Bubbling Springs Park, and we could not locate her parents because she was non-communicative. And so we posted a Facebook posting, and within 32 minutes, thanks to Facebook, we had located the parents. A former teacher saw the Facebook posting and immediately contacted us, gave us a lead, and we were able to find the parents. That particular Facebook posting within an hour had been shared nearly 1,000 times and had been seen by 110,000 people, which is over 5 times the size of our city. So it's proven very effective. So with that, if you have any questions.
All right. Are there any questions from the dais? Yes, Councilmember Hensley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. A couple of different little quick items here. The Holico Campground, I understand the city of Oxnard is kind of closing that down and moving those homeless out. Are we receiving any spillover from that? Is it causing any extra overload for our community?
Not any type of noticeable overload at this point that I have noted or heard from the officers. So to answer your question, no.
Good. Okay. Second part, I want to commend you. You've jumped up, taken charge. You come in with new technology, social media, getting things done, cracking down on an illegal operation like this, and you become a vital part of our community. So I really appreciate, and I think most of the other persons in this room do too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions from the dais? Any questions? So I have a question. So this is our first crackdown on an illegal dispensary. Do you think that we'll have more? I mean, is it typical for a city, once they approve an ordinance, to have these folks kind of think they can just spring up into action as well?
This particular location was licensed by the city of Port Hueneme in August, and I believe went into business in September after the medicinal marijuana ordinance was passed. I think if we show a strong force at the outset, that fewer and fewer of these are going to attempt to show up in our city, especially since we have filed formal charges with the Ventura County District Attorney's Office and actually made 2 arrests as a result of this. We arrested both owners for felony distribution of marijuana.
Okay, and so what typically does that crime, it's a felony, what does it carry in terms of if they're found to be guilty? Is it like 20 years in prison, or?
For these types of crimes, you're looking at 2, 4, 6, or 8 years. But because we do allow medicinal marijuana to be dispensed in our city, it's probably not going to be treated as rigorously and may be treated as a misdemeanor depending on how it all plays out. I don't see there being very serious penalty that comes down as a result of this. So our attempt on the city level is going to be to simply close down the business and hope that they don't sprout up here again and somewhere else.
And so you said that they actually had a business license, and it was to sell what? I mean, was it?
Smoke accessories and apparel.
Wow, okay, thank you. Yes, Mayor Pro Tem Burke.
When you mention you recovered various cannabis, what have you, does that mean confiscated or?
Yeah, we confiscated for evidentiary reasons.
And then it eventually gets destroyed?
Yes, sir.
So he lost his investment there.
Yeah, do you know that, the value of what was then confiscated? Do you have any idea of what that was?
I don't. I'd probably have to rely to some of our folks out in the audience to help me give me a street value. Some of our operators are here. They could probably tell me what 8 pounds is worth right now in its current value. But we did seize quite a bit of money as well. So we seized the 2 things that will hopefully take them out of business.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you. Thank you. I also have the next item.
You do have the next item, so take it away for item 10B, request for allocation of community benefit funds.
So this was originally supposed to be put on the consent agenda, but it's probably just as easy to report up here, and that's we do have our Cops for Tots event coming up on Thursday, and it dawned on us at a very late time that the Community Benefit Fund is a resource that could help us with this event. And so I submit to you the following report, which requests approximately or $1,500 for our event, which is scheduled for this Thursday, December 21st. And of note is these funds directly target the children of the city of Port Hueneme.
Okay.
So I don't know if there's any questions.
With that, yes, Councilmember Hensley.
Just to kind of abbreviate the meeting, hopefully, I move to approve.
Right, is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, so motion and second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No? All right, any comments then? No? All right, thank you.
I hope to see all of you there. Thank you.
Have fun, absolutely, thanks. We move on to item 11A, and there's a series of reports here from our city manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor and members of the council. We'll start out tonight. Item A is a response to some folks that came and spoke at the December 4th meeting, and then there was a series of emails that were sent just prior to that December 4th meeting about this whole issue of energy aggregation organizations, Community Choice Energy, and there's a discussion right now going on throughout Ventura County about Ventura County itself and the cities in the county joining the Los Angeles Community Choice Energy Joint Powers Authority, which the acronym that you'll hear thrown around is LACE. I wanted to kind of dive into this tonight without, it's a complicated issue, and it would be hard to go through it in detail in a quick staff report tonight. So I'll just kind of tell you briefly. This goes back really to the whole discussion around energy deregulation that was going on back in the late 90s, early 2000s, not just in California, but in several states. And there was legislation passed at that time at the state level that tried to allow for various forms of electric deregulation, as well as the opportunity to create these energy aggregation community organizations. So there is, under California law now, the right that, Port Hueneme could do it ourselves as a individual city. You can also group with other public entities, which is what this LA County Community Choice Joint Powers Authority is a collection of, or a grouping of, cities in Los Angeles County, along with the County of Los Angeles itself, which is kind of spearheading this effort to create a purchasing organization for electric power. My crash course in all this over the past couple weeks, and I really thank Sue Hughes at the county. She's been extremely helpful to me. I've always said if you're going to become a professional plagiarizer, at least have the courage to acknowledge it, admit it in public. And I plagiarized large, with Sue's permission, I plagiarized large amounts of the county staff report, and I acknowledged that a couple times in the staff report from the city. Sue had put together a very thorough report on the various issues that the county board of supervisors should be thinking about, and there's a lot of similarity to a city council. And so big sections of that staff report were basically taken from the county report. Excuse me. But the idea is that I think arguments that the proponents would make are you have a chance for lower energy costs through this public purchasing cooperative. You have the opportunity to promote a clean energy supply in your community, because you can go out and purchase wind power, solar power, other forms of non-traditional electric power as part of your purchasing cooperative. So I think those are the two primary arguments in favor. Cost savings potentially because you're not going through an investor-owned utility like Southern California Edison. This is a public cooperative. The other thing is in an age where we're all trying to be energy efficient, move toward clean energy, have less of a carbon footprint, lower greenhouse gas emissions. This is a way to move that forward in your community by choosing a power source profile that is clean energy oriented. Maybe not 100%, but maybe higher than what Edison is doing currently. Now, with the help of Mayor Pro Tem Berg, I did have a good conversation with a couple of people at Southern California Edison to kind of get their perspective on it. Edison is actually forbidden by law to either speak for or against these organizations. So they were helpful, but it's not their role to say, yes, you should do this, or no, you shouldn't. I think it's important to point out that if we were to go in this direction, customers in Port Hueneme would still pay their monthly electric bill to Southern California Edison. Edison would still be responsible for the transmission and distribution of the power source. I don't know if it's a perfect analogy, but it's kind of like the old days when we had the long-distance telephone wars here. Remember back in the early and mid-90s, every commercial on TV was either MCI or WorldCom, or the whole thing was, which long-distance provider do you want to choose? In many cases, you still paid your monthly bill to Verizon or GTE or the companies that were around at that point, but you may have had a different long-distance carrier that was providing your long-distance services. Kind of a similar situation where you would still be paying your monthly bill to Southern California Edison, but you might have LACE as your power source, your electrical source. Quick trip around the county in terms of where cities stand right now, where the county stands. The cities that have said yes so far are Thousand Oaks and Ojai. And then just as of last Tuesday, a week ago tomorrow, the County Board of Supervisors, Ventura County, said yes, that they were going to move forward and join this JPA. It was a split vote. I haven't had a chance to look at the video yet, but it's a 3-2 vote, but the yeses prevailed in that vote. On tomorrow's Oxnard Council agenda, this item is being considered. I forwarded to the council this morning, for those of you that had a chance to check out your email, the Oxnard staff report, which I also thought was very good, very thorough, and provided a lot of just the history and the background of these energy aggregation organizations. So I'd recommend, if this discussion goes forward here beyond tonight, that you take a look at that Oxnard staff report. It was really well done, and they're going to be talking tomorrow night about whether they want to move forward or not. My take on the staff recommendation there was that they are going to hold off for a while and study the issue a little more before they make a commitment. The cities that have taken no action, oh, by the way, so I'm calling Oxnard a maybe. City of Ventura is also a maybe from what I understand. They were moving forward. It looked like the momentum was toward a yes, we're going to join this. And then, of course, the nightmare hit 2 weeks ago, and that has with the fire, that has kind of, changed all of their priorities and their focus for now. So we don't know if they'll pick up later and choose to join or not. Cities that have taken no action right now are Fillmore. Simi Valley, I think, had a discussion a while ago about the issue, but decided not to move forward, and it's not certain at this point whether they're going to bring it back on a future council agenda. And then Camarillo, Moore Park, and Santa Paula have all taken no action at this point. So that's kind of a look at where the other governmental agencies in the county stand. I went ahead and made a recommendation as part of the staff report that you direct the city attorney to prepare an ordinance that would allow us to join LACE if the council chooses it to go in that direction. The reason I did that is not because I'm necessarily pushing this as a top priority for the city at this point, but if we are going to move forward in joining, we've got to do that ordinance. The state law says we have to, in order for us to move forward, whether we're going to do our own purchasing agency or whether we join with an existing group, we have to have that ordinance in place. And this is not a cannabis business, 6-month process. It's a fairly simple ordinance, but I would want our city attorney to draft it for us and to really be on board with what that ordinance says, along with giving us his input on the legal ramifications of joining a JPA like this. I could go on and on with a lot of the pros and cons. Some of the anti-aggregation folks would argue, for example, that we could be assuming a lot of liabilities of this JPA organization. If the JPA LA County were to flop for some reason, would we then be stuck with the cost, proportionate share of the cost of the energy profile that they have purchased, the energy supply that they've purchased? Would we be stuck with, I've even heard arguments made about pension obligations down the road. If LA County hires 100 employees down the road, somehow it goes belly up, is the city of Port Hueneme then stuck with a portion of that pension liability? So there are a lot of different arguments that are raised. And again, if you take the time to read that county staff report and the Oxnard staff report, they try to at least shed some light on those various questions. I personally, again, I made the recommendation to have the city attorney draft the ordinance. I don't think this is a huge priority for the city right now. It would not hurt my feelings if the council said we want to step back from this a little bit and study it more. I think there will be other opportunities down the road to join either LACE or another purchasing cooperative if the council just doesn't feel comfortable with moving forward at this time. There is some discussion. There was a lot of talk about, you have to act by December 27th, and that was true. That was the original LACE requirement. If you were going to be one of the original member cities, you had to, I think originally you had to have your first reading and your second reading completed by December 27th. They have now backed off of that a little bit, especially for Ventura County cities because of the fire. There's a process now where we could request of the LACE JPA board an extension to join and not be subject to the December 27th deadline. There's also the possibility that, extension or no extension, they will probably be allowing members to join down the road. It's in their best interest to have a larger membership base. So, we could be a phase 2 or a phase 3 member. There's nothing that I don't think there's a big panic personally about doing this. There's no way we're going to meet December 27th anyway. if the council directed me tonight to ask for that extension, I can certainly do that and see if we can get in under the fire impact extension. And then the last thing is there are other JPAs that I think Lancaster, City of Lancaster did their own. The Edison folks were helpful in sharing some of those other aggregation agencies that are out there with me. And again, Edison doesn't have a horse in the race. They really can't either endorse or oppose the concept. I think with that, I will turn it over to the council now. Again, we're kind of looking for general discussion and direction tonight on whether you think this is an item that the city should move forward with at this point, or whether we should study a little bit more, see how this whole process unfolds.
Okay, are there any questions from the dais? Councilmember Hensley.
Thank you. I appreciate Mr. Butler. I've been kind of following this along the lines. I went to one of the county presentations on it a while back, and what it appeared like to me, it sounds good, but there's a lot of things that sounds good. From what I understood in the presentation, we might save 3 cents per kilowatt hour, maybe 1 cent per kilowatt hour, maybe could go the other way a little bit if we joined it. Do you have any definitive figures in that whatsoever?
I don't have anything definitive tonight. I know the argument that the proponents make is that when you make it a public purchasing cooperative, some of the overhead and profit, for lack of a better term, that an investor-owned utility has is gone, and therefore you can buy at a lower rate. But I haven't seen anything in my own research so far that would really put a firm guaranteed number on. I can tell you from the research, and the Edison folks as well as the pro aggregation folks confirm this. In general, the cost of renewable energy is coming down significantly. So that kind of secular trend in the cost of renewable energy is there, but I haven't heard anything that would guarantee the certain amount of savings that we would get by joining, as opposed to just staying with Edison. And keep in mind, I should have said this earlier, Edison is required as an investor-owned utility in California. They're required by the state to increase their percentage of renewable energy over time, and they are moving, consistent with that state law, toward a higher renewable percentage in their overall profile.
If I may continue on that, just my thoughts on it, and having followed it and what you're saying, Mr. Butler, it sounds good on the surface. We don't really know that much about the organization. Technology is changing rapidly. Renewable energies is coming in all over the place. I would feel far more comfortable to kind of sit back and watch this come to a fruition of some sort of point before we make any real significant decision on it.
Okay. Councilmember Sharkey?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is, I think, the third time I've been around this merry-go-round. This is one of those things that boy, it sounds like a good idea, but then the implementation is always difficult. And where it usually comes to cropper is that the investor-owned utilities own the transmission lines. And it's not in their interest to have competitors. They are, of course, regulated by the Public Utilities Commission, but I think we all have our own opinions as to who controls the Public Utilities Commissions and the kind of decisions they render. As I look at this is probably the strongest aggregation effort that I've seen thus far. There was an earlier one not too long ago. They were trying to do a tri-county effort, but that straddled the PG&E SCE line, and that didn't work either. Some of the other aggregators are very small. It's Lancaster is kind of out there by itself, and it does it. And there's a couple of them up north. Having LA as the big brother in this, I think it gives it a lot of heft and a lot of weight. And as I read through, apparently, and this is a good task for Mr. Green, I guess. Apparently, it's Los Angeles that's taking most of the risk. And it's in their interest to get the widest rate base as possible, which is why they're trying to get everybody else involved. We've got a number of folks around the county that are looking to join. I mean, we're not on our own, which is something I wouldn't like either. I like the staff recommendation. There's no reason we can't draft an ordinance. And as for the extension, there was some discussion on the deadlines and all that, but you know, I have a feeling those deadlines can be pretty flexible. So you know, I would support the overall, and it's not that I don't have some doubts about this, but I see no reason to move forward at least that far. I think it's a fair recommendation, and you know, the recommendation to draft an ordinance and ask for an extension. So I would support that.
Councilmember Fig.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We got enough on our plate. We got a strategic action plan that sets priorities, and we're way behind the curve. Let's don't take on a new initiative. Sounds good to task Mr. Green to write up an ordinance, but I'd rather see that time spent on initiatives we've already endorsed. So I would be in opposition to moving forward on this initiative, including preparing an ordinance for this council to consider.
And Mayor Pro Tem Berg.
Thank you. I'm pretty much of the same frame of mind. SoCal Edison buys their electricity 30 years out. They've got long-term contracts that provide you know, predictability, and we know in 5 years what we're going to be paying. If we signed up for something like this, so this impacts all the citizens of Hueneme, would they all have to switch over to this other system, or could they keep SoCal Edison if they so chose to? You know, the greenhouse gas reductions, obviously they're looking at renewable energy sources, which are subsidized because they're so profitable. And it's getting cheaper all the time, and they keep getting subsidized. Last time the state of California got involved in the electricity game, I think companies like Enron were really doing a lot of good for people. I'd be cautious in approaching this. I don't mind drawing up the ordinance. We don't have to do it overnight. Take your time, a little extra time to do that so that we could be ready, but I would approach this with extreme caution.
Okay, so there's some strong sentiment here on the dais. Do we have a motion? There aren't
I
any.
motion that we sit back and watch it.
Okay, is there a second?
Look, you want
yes.
to write a, you want him to,
I don't see the sense of, like Councilman Figg said, that we've got so many things on our plate at the present time. We already have high attorney fees, no complaints, but we don't need to add to them. The cost of the ordinance is just an additional amount for something we may not need that we can implement down the road or plagiarize from another community, possibly. So,
and perhaps he could draw up that that language quickly then.
Yeah.
Not take so much time.
I'll second your motion. I assume by saying that you would say let's stand down, let's table action on this matter, including any direction to staff to expand any further resources on this initiative until further notice.
Okay, so there's a motion.
Is that in line with your thinking?
Maybe the audience would like to.
Possibly the audience might like to participate too.
Yeah, so I don't have any speaker cards, and if there are any speakers for this, we'll take you now, but no speaker cards. So there's, yes.
Madam, you know,
yes.
I understand the, you know, the go slow approach, but I don't see any reason why we couldn't proceed and be ready and do, you know, perhaps get more research, and if we, you know, if you're looking at possible savings, and there are possible savings with these. Some of these aggregators do save their customers money. even 1 to 3 cents a kilowatt hour certainly adds up. That's not a small amount, actually. So I would, I'm opposed to simply tabling this, and I do favor the staff recommendation. So.
Okay,
So we have a motion and a
We have
second.
a motion and a second, so could we have a roll call then for that? Oh. Sure, you could speak. You could fill out a speaker card
Okay.
later, yeah.
I just have a question. So they come to the city to say, join this JPA. Is this program designed to benefit the cities that are joining as members of the JPA? And like you said, there could be some legacy costs, there's insurance costs, there's possible pension costs if it goes belly up. And so is the main benefit to the cities, to the counties that are joining, or is the main benefit to the ultimate ratepayer?
So, Mr. City Manager, you
Yeah,
want
so I
to
think,
take a stab at that?
I think the proponents of LACE or other aggregation agencies would say it's for the benefit of the ratepayer because of potential savings and moving forward with possibly even faster achieving goals of renewable energy faster. And in the case of LACE, the County of Los Angeles is fronting $10 million to get the thing off the ground. The idea is that that'll be paid back. It's being called a loan. So that's where the LACE startup funding is coming from. But again, I mean, there are issues that have been raised about, and this is why you would want your city attorney heavily involved in the JPA agreement. What does that say in terms of things like if we were to want to leave down the road? Is there a cost to that? If there were, some major financial calamity that hit LACE and they cease to exist, what happens to the liabilities of that JPA? So there are arguments on both sides, but I think the proponents would say, we're doing this as a way to provide clean, renewable, and less expensive electricity.
Subsidized energy. The one thing that caught my ears was Enron, and I think the go-slow approach might be the most appropriate at this point, because I think Enron was set up similar to what this is.
Yes.
Yeah, this has nothing to do with Enron. Enron was buying, selling futures and credits. The notion is that if you have competition, you're going to get better prices, and that's the bottom line. As simply as possible. This sets up a competitive market as opposed to a monopoly utility, which is what we have now.
Madam Mayor, may I call for the question?
Yeah.
I kind of heard that differently. I heard that it's more of a co-op save money rather than competition.
Well, competitive. It's competing with SCE, with the investor-owned utilities.
Yeah.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
Call for the question,
That's
please.
right. That's what we'll do. Is there another speaker? Okay, so come on up. Yes.
Good evening, Mayor Schottenberg, council and audience. Bob Romber, Hueneme Foundation. I would like to encourage you to table the thing primarily from the reason it was mentioned, I believe, Councilman Sharkey mentioned changing technology. Technology is changing rapidly. As Rod Butler will tell you, I'm very hot on trying to get the wastewater treatment plant to do things other than ruin our beaches. Currently, one of the things we're looking at with Stanford is a biomass generating facility, which would actually move us towards cleaner technology dramatically. Obviously, we'd have to get a cooperation with the city of Oxnard. I am working with them as well. I would urge you strongly to table this. I think you're going to burn up resources when there are new technologies around the corner. You're talking about old technology that's 20 years old. It's going to take 5 years to implement it, and in that time, the new technology has arrived. So, just for what it's worth, I would say back off for now. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. One more call for anyone else in the audience on this item. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Could we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Fig?
Yes.
Councilmember Hensley?
Yes.
Councilmember Sharkey?
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Berg?
Yes.
Mayor Schnapp.
No. Okay, so it passes, then it is, my understanding, then it's tabled.
Tabled for now.
Okay, all right, thank you. So we move on to item 11B.
Yes.
Mr. City Manager?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Items B and C are just kind of formalizing some personnel decisions that the council has, in one case, already acted on with my city manager recommendation. And then the other is just confirming the interim, so this is 11B, confirming the interim appointment of Ken McDonald, who joined us in October 30 after some changes in our finance department staffing. This is again, an interim agreement. We are just now wrapping up a recruitment for a permanent finance director, and we'll be making some decisions on that over the next few weeks. The agreement is included as part of your agenda report. It's similar to other employment agreements that we've implemented for our department directors recently, with the exception being that this is an interim appointment, so it's an hourly compensation rate. And then unless there's objection, I think I'll just move on to item C and say that this is the confirmation and appointment of Tony Stewart as our Community Development Director. You'll recall a couple of meetings ago, we presented an item, kind of a reorganization of the community development function and area, and went back to the old style of having that be a separate department with a director reporting to me. And my recommendation was that Tony Stewart, who has been our deputy director of community development for a number of months earlier this year, that he be appointed to that director position. So this agreement formalizes that, and again, this would be an at-will employment agreement, which is kind of our new model for our directors, and it would be very similar to the agreements that have been approved by the council earlier this year as we appointed other new directors. So my recommendation would be approve both of those agreements, the interim agreement for Mr. Ken McDonald, and then the permanent appointment of Tony Stewart as Community Development Director.
Okay. Mr. City Attorney, would you like for us to take them individually?
There's no legal reason why you couldn't take them jointly unless a member wishes to vote differently on the two. So what I would suggest is that you ask if there is a motion to approve both, and then take comment from the members. If you have one that wants to vote differently on one of them than the other, then you should withdraw that motion and deal with them separately.
Okay. So is there a motion to approve both B and C?
I move to approve items B and C.
Is there a second? There's no second? Okay, so
Okay,
then.
I move to approve item B.
All right, thank you. Is there a second on that?
I'll second that.
Okay, all right. Could we have a roll call, please, on that?
Any discussion?
Yes, any discussion?
Mr.
Councilmember
Butler,
Fig?
have you had any discussion with Mr. McDonald about some issues that have been trailing since our budget adoption process last year? We were looking forward to, by year end, to have a mid-year review of our expenditures and revenues, and now that we have several lawsuits that are pending and other expenses that were not anticipated, it would seem timely that we revisit those things like yesterday, not tomorrow. Have you had those kinds of discussions with Mr. McDonald about bringing back at the earliest possible date, as well as our situation with 22 new hires and discussions about wanting to really vet out whether there's an urgency to backfill vacancies or new hires? But time continues to march ahead, and we don't seem to get closure. So I'm asking you, has that been a discussion point with our new interim finance director?
Yes, on multiple occasions. I will tell you that it will probably be February at the soonest that kind of a comprehensive report would be here, because, for one thing, we would like to really give you a true mid-year report, which would include as close to 6 months of data as we can get, and especially on the revenue side, it takes that long to get.
I understand, but
Yeah.
time marches on, and without, short of having a moratorium on employment, on hirings, I would hope that you would take notice of what I've been asking for and what's been expected for months, that there would not be any further hirings until that discussion occurs in front of this body.
I'm not going to commit to a freeze publicly at this point, but I certainly hear the concern about filling positions. I can disabuse you of one one major misunderstanding that, and I don't blame anyone on the council for it, because it was the way that the budget was presented. There really are not 22 new positions. In fact, I had a long conversation with Arlene Martinez, the reporter from the Ventura County Star, because she continues to print that in articles about the city's finances. What happened is, and this is going to make some of your eyes glaze over, but you'll recall that in the spring of 2016, when John Baker was interim city manager, and there was the discussion about, and I just use that, I'm not blaming Mr. Baker, I'm using it as a historical point of reference. There was a discussion about contracting out the facilities crew and the landscape crew, which was a total of at least 12 or 13 positions, maybe more than that. So those positions got removed from the budget as full-time authorized positions, because the assumption was that those functions were going to be contracted out. When we presented the budget in the summer of this year, 2017, for the 17-18 year, all of those positions were added back in, which reflected reality, which is the council decided not to contract out those functions at this time. But it was not explained properly, because those positions, those employees never really went away. So they weren't new positions being added. It was just reflecting, you know, that the previous budget had shown them being gone, and now we were showing them, you know, the reality of what is, you know, what is now here, which is the council decided not to move forward with those. And so of those 22 positions, at least 15, 16 were related to that presentation issue in the budget, rather than actually, you know, the city hiring.
So my question is, why didn't we have the discussion before the end of this fiscal year, or the end of this calendar year, as it was expected, so we would have clarity on some of those numbers? So what you're telling me is that the pie isn't as big as it was led to believe to be, so you wouldn't have an objection to a moratorium or a freeze on whatever the number is that you end up telling us is actually in the works.
Well, I think a hiring freeze at some point, if it's
well, let me
justified.
tell you another thing that's troubling to me, and it's the next item, but we put out a recruitment for a deputy city manager with the understanding that that position was backfilling and serving as the director of several additional departments. Now we're have already elevated, against my vote, the director of community development. Do we need a deputy city manager, certainly at the salary range that's being requested, when in fact the duties are different now than what was needed at the time that recruitment began? That's why I'm saying is that we keep putting this stuff off, and I'm hoping that our new interim finance director is listening, is that these are issues that are pressing, and they seem to just trail for whatever reason. And I'm hoping that you've had that discussion so that we can get this to a point of closure.
Yeah, and we've had multiple discussions, and we take it as our primary responsibility to deal with and resolve the general fund shortfall, both as a finance director and
But
as a
we
city
keep
manager.
spending money, and we keep losing money because of lawsuits and payouts and the like. I'm sorry. You know, that's my concern here, is that we keep talking the talk, but we're not walking it.
Okay, so if we can return to the motion that is on the table, then could we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Fig?
Yes.
Councilmember Hensley?
Yes.
Councilmember Sharkey?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Berg?
Yes.
Mayor Schnapp?
Yes. Okay, so that deals with item 11B. So on 11C, is there a motion? Is there any discussion? Any further discussion on C? So is there...
Yes, I do.
Oh, okay.
Anna Henley. There was another party that you've brought on board, an excellent hire for our recreation department. Another example of why do we need a deputy city manager that previously backfilled and served as a manager of that department as well as community development. I think there's some cost savings here that we ought to consider, because I don't think the scope of the duties of the deputy city manager are as broad as they once were. I'm sorry.
Well, no, you ask a question, so, Mr. City Manager.
Yes, I do believe that a deputy city manager position is still necessary, and we'll find plenty of responsibilities and work for that person to do. But having said that, we are looking very closely at the structure of the management positions, especially at City Hall. And don't want to go public with anything yet, because it all depends on how the deputy city manager search concludes, and we're very close on that. It closed November 29th. This is another Bill Avery and Associates recruitment. But I am confident that when we come forward in the spring with kind of a refresh of the two-year budget, there will be at least one management level position that is currently vacant that will be recommended to be eliminated. So I stand strongly that we need that deputy city manager position, but I also, and a part of this is recommendations that Mr. McDonald is making as he evaluates the finance function. We see at least one full-time management level vacant position that we will be recommending go away, and that'll result in savings. It may not be 100% general fund, because some of these positions are
Okay, so
are
Madam
funded
Mayor,
with-
I'm going to vote no, because again, we're dealing with these things in a piecemeal fashion. And until we have a bigger overall discussion of the employment situation at large, including alternatives to contracting and outsourcing of services, it's not a reflection on my feelings toward Mr. Stewart and his abilities as a department head. It has to do with our overall organizational structure and our structural deficit. So I'm done with my comments.
Okay, all right, so is there a motion for item 11C?
I'll move to approve.
Is there a second?
I share Councilman Figg's concerns. I too have noticed that we're hiring people now and bringing on more. I'm going to second this motion, but you're on notice now. Please pay attention.
So
well, that is not to say that I have not been. Okay.
Okay. Sorry, I didn't mean it to sound that way.
And maybe the clarification here is that there was the, caveat years ago where we were looking to outsource, and this body, different folks were on here. We decided not to outsource, so we had to deal with the employees actually still being employees of the city. And certainly there have been transitions within the city of Port Hueneme staff that have created some of these open positions. And I believe first and foremost is, we have done research within the finance department. There have been some changes there. Mr. Butler has continued to review each and every department, you know, including then some of these that usually had reported to the deputy city manager are now going to be reporting directly to him. So he's looking at really changing up the structure, but still allowing the city to thrive and survive and get everything done. So I think it's going to be a different kind of tactic that we've seen in order to get these either positions filled, recategorized, eliminated, reporting up in a different structure, so on and so forth. So I commend him. It's, you know, trying to move a ship and change the insides of the ship as we're moving forward. So I know it's a difficult position, but I believe he's faced it head on and continues to address those issues.
And the ship has less and less fuel.
The ship is
We're
less and
running out of
less
gas.
fuel.
We're
Right.
running out of gas.
Well, certainly we have had the hit on reserves and not met our budget target. So, you know, certainly that's something that we'll all take a look at, and we look forward to the February report. So with that, there's a motion and a second. Madam City Clerk, could we have a roll call, please?
Could we have a statement of that again, please?
To restate that?
Yes.
Okay, so Councilmember Sharkey?
The motion is to approve the recommendation for item 11C.
All right, so Madam City Clerk.
Councilmember Fig?
No, for the reasons I previously spoke, because it isn't a vote of no confidence to Mr. Stewart.
Councilmember Hensley?
I keep being more and more concerned of hiring or the top level management while the rank and file employees are stagnant and has been for years. Mr. Tony Stewart's doing a great job, but I don't really see the need for it right now. If we can hold this in status quo and bring it back maybe another month, 2 months, see what's going to happen with our revenues in the coming year. So I vote no.
Councilmember Sharkey?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Berg?
Yes.
Mayor Schnapp?
Yes. So the motion carries 3-2. And then with that, we move on to item 11D. Is this you, Mr. City Manager? Or-
City Clerk, did you want me to handle this one? Or I don't want to steal your thunder. This is just something that we go through every year. It's required by state law, and it requires us to post any openings in our existing citizen commissions or committees. And Michelle has gone through and provided you an update of what's currently available. This has nothing to do with the ongoing discussion about a citizens advisory board, which we will be coming forward with, and we may even be discussing the consolidation of some of our existing boards into, or committees into that new body. But this is something we have to do by law each year to notify the public of opportunities that exist with our current structure.
Okay, are there any questions for the city manager there? Mayor Pro Tem Berg, did you know that you had appointments that you're going to be making here?
I do now.
Okay, so with that, I'll entertain a motion then.
Move to approve.
And is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, thank you. So, Madam City Clerk, we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Fig?
Yes.
Councilmember Hensley?
Yes.
Councilmember Sharkey?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Berg?
Yes.
Mayor Schnapp?
Yes, all right, so we approve that unanimously, thank you. And we move on then to item 12, council member reports, comments, and requests for future agenda items. Is there anything here from my colleagues on the dais to report? Councilmember Sharkey.
Sure. Mr. Fig and I attended the City Port Standing Committee with the Oxnard Harbor District. We discussed community development, community benefit fund. It was a wide-ranging and productive conversation. We discussed many items, several of them. A couple that come to the top of my mind. One was spending funding for pedestrian safety around the city. more funding for community events, and looking at coastal resiliency in the face of sea level rise. One further item I'd like to bring up in light of some of the comments we heard here this evening from the public, and this, I mentioned this casually before, but I don't know if it should be agendized as direction to staff, depending on the will of the council. But as we look at the properties around the city at the beachfront, you know, and Mr. Kinney, of course, has delineated a number of them and has tried to market some of them. We have that crescent that runs from Market Street down to the west end of the beach and over to the east end of the beach. That's one area where a charrette may be appropriate. A charrette is a community directed meeting where the community gets together and it tries to envision what they would like to see there. If it's going to be done properly, it can't really be done on the cheap. You know, there are a few places that the National Charrette Institute, Dwayne E. Plater and Zybeck, a couple of firms that do that sort of thing. You know, I would like to see for council consideration at least some notion of scoping and what it would cost. And as we look at people that, developers that come to town, not naming anybody in particular, I don't know if they'd be particularly interested in something like that may not go their way, but it wouldn't hurt to ask them for some of the funding. These things generally run sort of mid-5-figure kind of thing. So I don't know if that needs to be agendized or if staff could just take it on themselves to, you know, on initiative. Just, I'm not asking for a bid process right now. I'm just asking for kind of a notion of what the scope and cost would be should we decide to go that route.
Mr. Sharkey, I like the train of thought. I'm not necessarily in agreement with that particular approach. I think that we need to have a discussion about where we go from here. We had a very well-attended community meeting regarding the West End project. I think that maybe we need to regroup and have a general discussion among us as to where we want to see things head from this point forward. Staff has been driving this process by and large. I think it's time that the council weighs in as to where they like to see things head. So I'm in agreement with your idea of let's explore these things, let's make it more inclusive, and I think it warrants a broader discussion, and I wouldn't limit it to just the East End. So I endorse your idea, but no, I wouldn't direct staff to do anything at this point other than to agendize.
Well, Madam Mayor, just to point out, I'm not asking for any expenditure. I'd just like to get an idea of what it would cost and you know what the scope would be and how we would do it if we decide to do it. You know, because right now, I mean, I can guess at what it would cost, and you know, it may be worth doing, it may not, and I think we're looking at a large enough question that it might merit that kind of an effort. But right now, I don't even have enough information to say for certain whether it does. And so I'm just looking for kind of a broad scope. Okay, so I'm hearing that we'll just ask staff to kind of just investigate in terms of what it would cost, time frame. That's a good word. Right, okay. All right, super, thank you. Anything else? Councilmember Hensley.
If I may, Madam Mayor, just as kind of an afterthought, everybody knows that I bang the drums for better public safety. Going down Ventura Road, going down Channel Islands Boulevard, particularly in the morning and the evenings, I'm going at the speed limit of 45 miles an hour, and cars are passing me that must be doing 60 and 70, eager to get to work. I know the police department's understaffed and are having a hard problem on it. I think we still need to continue to examine the concept of, number one, getting some of those speed signs back in occasionally, and to look somewheres in the near future of getting a motorcycle officer, hopefully, which will help pay for a large portion of his or her cost of their salary. So that's something that I hope we can bring back to the table one of these days soon. Thank you.
All right. Do you have anything to add?
Just
Mayor
one
Pro
last
Tem
little
Burke?
item would be that I'm very much looking forward to a very robust discussion of the budget in February. In detail, I want a nice picture.
And with that, I've also had a meeting with Mr. Butler, and moving forward then with the strategic plan, I call it version 2.0. And so we'll have an update on that in the next few months. I believe it might be about that same time frame. So thank you. What I have to share is that it was a really wonderful, and Mr. Gama's not here, but it was a really wonderful senior holiday luncheon that we had. Here, oh, there he is. Sorry, I thought you were sitting over here first. You moved. Anyways, thank you so much for arranging all of this, and it was all hands on deck, but there were so many moving parts, and to those that attended to have a great time, that's what they did. So who knows what didn't happen behind the scenes and what we were running around trying to do, but everyone really enjoyed it. It was a great meal. It was wonderful entertainment. They really enjoyed seeing each other. I heard that from several attendees, that this is really the only time they get to see some other folks, and they look forward to this event. So good job.
I really appreciated the service that you all provided.
Yeah.
That was the best thing.
Yeah, our pleasure. So thank you. One of the things that I want to mention as well as we look into the community benefit funds, this city, this beautiful little city of Port Hueneme, the friendly city by the sea, is turning 70, and don't we look good? And so we celebrate in March, which just comes up really quickly, but I certainly hope that as we see some benefit to use those funds, that we use this to celebrate then who we are and what we stand for in this community. I just want to remind everybody that we have two really large economic engines that sit within our city limits, and that's the Port of Hueneme, Oxnard Harbor District, and Naval Base Ventura County, Port Hueneme. And not only do they employ lots of folks, there's lots of economic value and investment in our region, and it's coming from this city, so please keep that in mind. We're not just a city by the beach. Well, we generate a lot for the community, and we want to make it so in the future. Let's see, and Mr. City Manager, I also want to include in on, maybe it's part of the budget, but the business license fee and what we're doing there. I know, I believe it was Mr. Gama who brought up certain things that he had found out from another paying customer of the business license fee, but certainly an update as to where we stand there. And last but not least, I have a gift, present, reminder, what would you call it? Acknowledgement. So this actually goes to Tom Figg, who served us as mayor for the year 2016-2017, and this is a very nice plaque in appreciation of his leadership. And you cannot remove the gavel, I want you to know. I own the gavel for this year. And so with that, Tom, here you go.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Some of you may or may not have been here when this happened, or you saw it on one of the videos, is that we had a presentation when I was on the mayor, I was mayor. An individual wasn't really thrilled with some of the maintenance of our restrooms at the beach. And what happened to that toilet brush? That was my new gavel that I was presented with. And, you know, I don't know if I could take this off. But anyway, thank you very much. I appreciate the sentiment.
You're welcome. All right. Moving on to item 13, it's a continuation of open forum. So if there's anyone in the audience who wishes to address the city council on items not on the agenda, you have this opportunity at this point. Seeing none, don't rush to the podium, but seeing none, we then move on to item 14. There isn't a closed session tonight. So then this council adjourns to the next regular meeting to be held on Tuesday, January 16th, here at 6:30. Happy holidays, happy Hanukkah,
if I
Merry
might,
Christmas.
Mayor, we also have a special workshop. Is that right? Thursday this week?
Thursday.
I don't know if you need
Good-
to adjourn to that.
Yeah, good
or-
point. That's right. Thursday, 1 o'clock, water rate continuation discussion.
Okay, all right. With that, happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and we'll see you in the new year.